Is there a secret plan between Ripple and the US government to allow XRP to become America's infrastructure and global provider of digital assets? Could they use it to help pay down our $40 trillion debt using XRP? There's a large part of the XRP community that believes there is a plan of action here. This video is going to get into what that plan is. We're also going to understand, if this were to play out, what needs to happen first. Where does the value come from? How do we get XRP from $2.80 to $1,000 or $10,000? We're going to explore all of those ideas and so much more in this video, guys. Let's jump in. It's impossible for a layer 1 blockchain to function as intended if it's under that type of control. Ripple owns 48% of the XRP escrow. Okay. At dinner, President Trump, Brad, and Stewart agreed to transfer 35 to 40% of the escrow controlled by Ripple of the XRP escrow to the U.S. Treasury. 35 to 40 billion of the XRP. This would leave Ripple with approximately 13 to 18 billion XRP, which is way below the 20% mark. That allows them to be considered decentralized. But it would still allow them to be the largest corporate holder by far of XRP. Ripple can still be the lender of last resort and all that jazz. Boom. Ripple just solved their largest problem. How the hell do we distribute all this XRP in compliance with applicable laws? This deal will close next week. In Jimmy's opinion, Trump will then revalue XRP at a significantly higher amount than what is currently trading. Remember what happened in 1933 when FDR confiscated the gold and had everybody turn it in? And then Okay, a few things here. One, nobody can revalue XRP. XRP is a decentralized blockchain infrastructure, right? Not even Ripple or Brad or David Schwartz can go in and revalue XRP. Now, you could say that XRP traded in these markets will only be traded for this amount. But you can't just go in and start messing with the calculations. Increase the price in gold. This is a gold 33 all over again. We could revalue or re-equitize, if you will, XRP. And Trump could say, oh, just for shits and giggles. Let's say it's worth $10,000 a coin. And tu sais, that's what we think the net discounted present value is based on the value of XRP in the next 20 years. What it's going to do for mankind and the value of this token. I'm going to deem it $10,000. Trump then has pulled a play from the FDR Depression era playbook. The U.S. Treasury is now sitting on $350 to $400 trillion worth of XRP. The United States Corporation, Russia, China. What if they were to divide up Okay, first of all, another claim that was made in this post was that Brad, Stewart Al-Arati, and Trump had this dinner, and Ripple agreed to give the Trump administration, or U.S. government, half the escrow XRP. Okay, now the issue with this claim for me is that Ripple unlocks 1 billion XRP per month. And over the last several months, almost every single month this year, they've relocked 70%. There was one month where they relocked like 67%. It was 670 million tokens, but most of it's been 700 million tokens. If that XRP was promised to a government, or if XRP was promised to BlackRock, wouldn't that XRP be going out to those institutions? That is my biggest problem. What are the problems with what is being said here? And so, there is credible information that Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple and President Trump, has met multiple times in 2025, including private meetings with high-profile events such as Private Dinner Mar-a-Lago and industry summits focused on U.S. crypto strategy. While concrete details about the direct agreement involving escrow XRP is handled or managed by the U.S. government, is not publicly confirmed by any official sources. So this is a lot of hearsay. All right, but let's say the U.S. does have a plan. How do you enact that plan? Where does it start? Let's get into that because I thought that was really interesting to jump into. So, the United States could theoretically use digital assets like XRP to help pay off its national debt through a multi-phase institutional strategy. But this would require dramatic regulatory changes, significant asset appreciation, and the creation of a new financial infrastructure to support such repayment mechanisms. Here is the core process overview. Current proposals suggest that the U.S. could establish a digital asset stockpile or strategic crypto reserve by gradually acquiring significant quantities of digital assets such as XRP, either directly from markets or potentially through relationship with large holders like Ripple. So the U.S. Trump did sign into executive order a strategic stockpile. But this strategic stockpile, you can't use taxpayer money to go buy digital assets. So what they're doing is any digital assets that have been confiscated by the U.S. government or state-level governments like the police, like here in Honolulu. Let's say they kicked in a door and they were, the slum laws were being broken at whatever the residence and there was money laundering and all this stuff and they found crypto. That crypto would be confiscated by the government and that would be added to the stockpile. But the issue for all of this has been, where do you send this like XRP or where do you send this crypto? Because you have all of these state and county level law enforcements and you're trying to get it to this one place, which is the U.S. Treasury. And there's a lot of stuff going on there. It is very difficult for these people to get in line and send all of this crypto and track it all down. The most important job you have right here in the crypto space is keeping your crypto safe. There are always scammers trying to take what is yours. The best way to keep your crypto safe is with a cold storage wallet like what I have here. This is a decent cold storage wallet. Anytime I'm live streaming, somebody's always asking, what is the best wallet to have? And people are often saying that Descent is one of their favorite wallets. So I had to reach out to the Descent team to find out what I was missing here. They have unmatched security with their fingerprint biometric technology. You can do the biometric card, you can do a card type wallet, or you can even use their mobile app. More about that in just a second. Descent Apps gives you information under the Insight tab on all your favorite cryptocurrencies, either CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap. Check pricing news and stay up to date with Descent state-of-the-art app technology. Simply connect your Descent device to the app and bam, you have everything that you need. Also, if you want to add any type of account to Descent, you connect your wallet and you can start trading inside of the app. Send, receive, swap, all at the hands of your fingertips. Descent state-of-the-art apps makes it super easy to trade your favorite cryptocurrencies. Descent supports 85 mainnets with 4,600 cryptocurrencies. Yes, XRP is one of those cryptocurrencies. They have some of the best reviews that I've seen in the crypto space. They also have NFT and DeFi support. They have market insights. You can get real-time data on your favorite cryptocurrencies. You can do swap and cross-chain swaps inside of the app. As well as when it comes to security, you can have up to a 25-word seed phrase. They also support some of the biggest blockchains in the world. Chances are you probably will find Descent has the security that you're looking for. They also have an additional $30 off right now. You can use the link down in my description. You can get $10 off with the link. An additional $20 off on the website. That's $30 off right now. $129 to get the wallet I have here in my hand. Go check out Descent today. You are going to be blown away with how cool everything is. Let's get back to the video. Appreciation of XRP's value is central to these proposals. The US would benefit only if the digital asset price increased many-fold, making its crypto holdings worth enough to offset existing debts. Here's a step-by-step walkthrough. Accumulation. The US government, potentially via the Treasury or working group, accumulates XRP either by direct purchase or through strategic partnerships or programs. Asset appreciation. The value of XRP must rise substantially. For instance, if XRP reaches $983 per token, expert analysis suggests that the US debt could theoretically be covered by the US holding a significant supply of the token. So 40 trillion, $1,000, you would basically need 40 billion XRP, which is not going to happen, right? That is over half the supply. Just not going to be realistic. You would need to have XRP reach 5 or 10,000 where the US owns a few billion. That is the best probably outcome for all of this because I don't see the US buying almost half the supply of XRP. And I think you could agree on that. Regulatory alignment laws and regulations must be updated to permit holding and transacting in XRP as part of a sovereign debt management. This includes integrating crypto custody at banks and potentially treating XRP as a complementary national currency. So that's something that could be pushed forward. Debt payment mechanism. When the price target is achieved, the US could. So if the US bought all this XRP and the XRP increased in price substantially, how does the US start using that value to pay down its debt? So they could remit XRP directly to creditors. So who holds that debt? They could say, well, here's 100 XRP. It covers the debt. I owe you good luck. And that person could go out and sell that XRP or redeem it for something else, a stable coin. And that's a way that they could do that. Convert XRP to US dollar or another stable currency via high liquidity pools that pays debts conventionally. So different liquidity pools if you have different country partners that have debt. So Japan, the UK, right, just to name a few, China, they have a lot of US debt. You need to pay those people back maybe with their own currencies, and you could do that with XRP and different currency pools. Tokenize existing debt instruments on the blockchain using XRP as the bridge or settlement asset, making the process more efficient and reducing costs. Use XRP transaction burns to increase overall debt liabilities as part of a macroeconomic strategy. This is not going to have any value. We know that if every transaction in the world happened on the XRP ledger, you would only burn through 34 million XRP per year. If every single world transaction happened on the XRP ledger, you would only burn through 34 million per year. It would take a long time. Long time. The outcome here, if executed carefully, this mechanism could theoretically retire or offset a significant portion of US national debt, while simultaneously modernizing the financial infrastructure and strengthening economic leadership in blockchain. All right. I also wanted to show you if the US held 1 billion or 5 billion XRP and they wanted to pay off 40 to 50 trillion, what would that need to be? What would that need to look like? So if the US holds 1 billion XRP, they would need XRP's price to be astronomical, right? This is like if XRP represents most of the financial assets in the world. This is like one of the best case scenario prices for XRP. Probably something that's not going to happen in our lifetimes, but you never know in 100 years, something like that. The value could see prices like this if, in fact, this is a global financial infrastructure for payments. If the US holds $5 billion, as you can see, they would only need $8,000 XRP, $5 billion to cover that $40 trillion. So this becomes a little bit more manageable because there's a lot of people that believe. Here's what the market caps would be, though, for those particular prices. So just understand what we are talking about here is significant. Now, you could reduce the supply. This is based on a 59 billion circulating supply with Flare and other DeFi layers coming in. They're trying to lock up XRP and bring down that circulating supply. So if you actually are able to bring this supply down to 10 billion or 5 billion, it would make it 6 to 15 or 6 to 12 times easier to reach these market caps, right? Because you would need a sixth of the market cap or a 12th of the market cap if you follow me, right? If you lower this down to, let's say, 10 billion, if you lowered this down to 5 billion, you could get a lot closer to some of these market caps. All right, could the US move the bond market or the debt market onto the XRP ledger to cover some of this? The US bond and debt market is extremely large, with estimated $58.2 trillion in total US fixed incomes of securities Q1 2025, including $28.6 trillion in treasuries. The rest is made up of corporate, municipal, and debt instruments. The US bond market here is $58.2 trillion. Globally, it's $140 trillion. The US treasuries represent $28.6 trillion, over 60% of US debt securities. The US national debt is $37 trillion, with about $29 trillion marketable and actively traded. What does tokenizing these markets on-chain look like? From Ondo and BlackRock and Ripple, they're already working to do this, as well as a company called OpenEden on the XRP ledger to tokenize US treasuries. Tokenizing the full US bond market means every bond security would have an on-chain representation and a digital token tradable on the XRP ledger. This is if we brought the entire market onto the XRP ledger. I'm trying to think like if the US were to do this plan, they would want to make XRP's price as high as they could. And a way to do that, in my opinion, would to be bringing the bond market onto the XRP ledger. That was a thought process here. Just to give you some of that, benefits include near instant settlement, transparency, improved collateral management, and new product innovation. XRPL already supports tokenization infrastructure and has handled institutional tokenized debt pilot programs. But the current tokenized real-world market asset value on all blockchains is only 26 billion. So you can see that we're not even at 50 billion or 100 billion yet. Institutional adoption is growing with recent launches of tokenized US treasuries on the XRP ledger, Ripple, and Ondo Finance. Potential impact, right? Talks about bringing 58 trillion in assets on the XRP ledger does not automatically mean that 58 trillion flows into the XRP ledger itself. If XRP is used purely as infrastructure layer, XRP may be needed as liquidity settlement token for transfers and payments, but not for the full value of every tokenized bond. The price impact depends on demand for XRP as a bridge asset or settlement token, whether institutional participants hold significant XRP for operations, and how much volume flows through the XRP ledger, and whether fees utility drives demand. All right, so those are some of the things that you can look for. And what are some of the conditions that we would need to get to a $10,000 XRP? You would need global institutional adoption of XRP. XRP must be adopted by banks, governments, and major financial institutions worldwide for cross-border settlements, collateralization, and tokenized asset operations. Ripple's on-demand liquidity would need to be the backbone of most cross-border payment global transactions. Settlement layer for tokenized assets. The XRP ledger would need to settle trillions or even quadrillions of dollars worth of tokenized real-world assets, including government bonds, derivatives, real estate, carbon credits, and more, requiring deep liquidity supply squeeze. And as institutions accumulate XRP for operational liquidity and collateral available circulating supply, would shrink, creating upward price pressure. My theory is that institutional hoarding dramatically raises the price of the demand, and the demand explodes. Of course, we talk about regulatory clarity and compliance. We know that's already being done. Scalable solutions to support trillions in transactions volumes the underlying XRP infrastructure would need to further technical upgrades. Ultra-high throughput, near zero failure rate, and biometric anchoring and robust safeguards against liquidation crisis, and of course talks about deep liquidity pools. It does talk about what problems XRP would need to solve. Cross-border payment bottlenecks, efficient collateralization of major assets, absorption of trillions of world assets, technical resilience, and regulatory uniformity. And you already look here, this is from the World Economic Forum. The XRP ledger is currently being used to tokenize debt. So we do know that this has started, and the XRP ledger will be a top choice for institutions and governments to tokenize debt. Now there is another issue here that the US Treasury is illiquid. Let me play this. The solvency of the United States Treasury. So that's why they cut rates. So we have inflation that he can't deal with. We've got illiquidity, right? We have illiquidity now in the bond market. The reverse repo facility, which is where all this money that was created by the Fed and went into excess reserves, and that was parked at the Fed earning a nice fat interest rate, was $2.5 trillion 2 years ago. Now it's $150 billion. So your liquidity in the reverse repo facility is gone. So now all you have is the Treasury General Account, and that's not going to last long. That'll be exhausted in early 2025, and then you have illiquidity in the bond market. So illiquidity, inflation, and insolvency. Those three things are very bad, and that's going to put a check on no matter who wins the White House. All right. So this has been the problem since the last administration. It's still the problem today. And so how could the USA use XRP to solve this liquidity crisis? The US could theoretically use XRP to address its liquidity crisis by leveraging the asset's blockchain-based capabilities to unlock and restructure the trillions locked in conventional financial instruments and sovereign debt. This could involve integrating XRP into government and banking operations, tokenizing debt assets, and using programmable infrastructure to accelerate liquidity and payment settlements. Talks about tokenizing debt of assets, government and bank integrations, debt payment mechanisms, and a few other things. Don't really need to get into all this because we did talk about this before, but I just wanted to give you some additional context on that. And then, of course, Quincy Jones, right? Speaking truth here. Nobody really knows where the price is heading and how much adoption Ripple or XRP will see on a global scale. We all believe and we all want, but nobody truly understands. Let me go and play this. So, anybody out there that's telling you they'll know where the price of XRP will go has no idea. Zero, absolutely zero clue. But I'll give you a tiny hint of an idea of what could happen. So XRP it's a financial instrument of value. And that instrument is really liquidity between different other instruments like bonds, stocks, currencies, all the everything basically. And the XRP is only worth the value of the things that are issued on it because it would cost XRP to buy those things on the network and use that liquidity. So what ends up happening here is not only do you have to issue all of the equity, but you've also got to issue all of the debt. So XRP is only bound by the fiscal responsibility of the people that issue assets on it, which is obviously irresponsible. So XRP could be at $100, $100,000, $1 million. It depends on how many assets you want to issue onto the network. So if you wanted to issue, $100 trillion worth of equity, cool. That's a lot of money on the network. What happens if they want to issue another $500 million worth of debt? That also adds value to the network. So there really is a mind-blowing amount of wealth, essentially, that could basically be flowing through these networks that we can't even comprehend because of that debt question of being able to issue more and more and more value. Could the US start issuing some of this debt, right, or these liabilities on the XRP ledger? And is that where true value can come from? These are all things that I'm just sitting here thinking about trying to better understand. I wanted to just put this together because I was kicking around these ideas on the airplane going back and forth from Brazil, and I was trying to put those ideas to video and to pen to paper, so you can kind of see how my mind is thinking about all this. I know there's a large part of the community that believes these things are going on. I would love to see all of these things, but until I can physically prove it or point to something that specifically says all of these things, I am just along for the ride here, right? And as soon as I can say with 100% certainty that this is the plan and this plan is being enacted, well then I will tell you gladly and happily. But let me know what you guys think about this video. Should the US be looking towards XRP to solve some of its financial issues? We know Bitcoin is a great store of value, a digital store of value, but that's it. So what comes next? Is it XRP? We'll see. See you next time. Bye.